Okay, welcome to the panel. I'm Rick Treitman. I'm an EIR here at Adobe, actually out of the Boston office, but part of the Document Cloud / Acrobat group. Duff, Ivan, and John are probably all well known to you, but I'm going to ask them to each introduce themselves to you as we get started. I've got a set of questions, I'm sure, but this is going to be an audience participation exercise as well. So any questions that we have in the audience, raise your hand. I'm happy to put mine aside. I'm sure yours will be a whole lot better. So with that, why don't we start with introductions, starting with Duff on this side, and introducing yourself, maybe your notion of what a platform, the platform we're talking about, would be or is.
Okay, so I'm Duff Johnson. I am the Executive Director for the PDF Association, and I am presently, until they decide otherwise, the ISO project leader for ISO 32000. And I'm a consultant, so whatever spare time happens to come around my way. Broadly speaking, for me, the PDF as a platform involves rethinking. Right now, we all think about PDF as being fundamentally a page description format. For me, I would like to think of it as a container format. And yeah, describing pages is one of the things PDF does, but it also does things like contain files with associated information. And I'm not sure that might not be just as important or close to as important of a feature as imaging of pages into the distant future. So my idea about a platform would tend to go into the way of thinking of PDF as a container more than it would be a page description.
I'm John Hewson. I'm a member of the project management committee of the Apache PDFBox project. I'm one of the main developers on the project. I've been working with PDF for a couple of years now, fairly in depth. My view on the platform is really that PDF is the only high fidelity kind of portable file format. There's so much information that's contained within there. There's so many different uses for it. If you're using it for text, or you're using it for graphics, or you're using it to turn off receipts on a label printer. So I think it's being used as an impromptu platform for a huge amount of data that's out there. Perhaps some of that could be structured better within PDFs. I think that would be something that's worth looking at in the future.
Hi, my name is Nincic. I'm the CTO at PDFTron Systems. So my view of PDF as a platform is that it's basically a stack, and it represents common understanding of how to reliably render and feed documents. And it's a common platform for building solutions.
Why don't you keep it, and then we'll come back this way. What are the dangers or challenges in PDF becoming an accepted platform?
Well, so one of the challenges of, so initially when PDF was conceived, there was a spec which was turned into an open specification, but the main the ecosystem was kind of driven by Adobe, so their Acrobat solution was used on most of the systems for viewing. And essentially this is what gave community impression that this is a format that's acceptable for a reliable representation of the documents. So now PDF is ISO standards, and it's being adopted by operating systems. Most of the major operating systems have some sort of PDF support baked in. There is a trend the specification is interpreted in different ways, or there might be some limitations. Certain features are not properly implemented. So this is all leading to fragmentation of the system, and it's a bit undermining the foundation of PDF. It's something that we can count on to render documents. So this fragmentation of the system is a potential challenge. Another challenge is this common understanding of what it means to be about a PDF. Like we're dealing with this all the time as part of their PDF project and the PDF Association discussions. There's sometimes a misunderstanding or different interpretations of the stack. And I think as a community, we need to find out a way to resolve this misunderstandings in an efficient way.
John, you have a response or a way that we can resolve the fragmentation problems?
That is a tough problem, it has to be said. I mean, a lot of these things, I've seen a lot of edge cases where you have PDFs that are really ambiguous parts of the stack. It would seem to me like that's something that we could solve. Someone can say it should be done that way. I mean, perhaps kind of tools for repairing files as well. A lot of these files will do something that's invalid. One reader decision will correct it one way, another person makes a different choice because it's arbitrary. Perhaps that could be some sort of tool out there that normalizes a PDF that follows the same set of rules from being standardized on. All the people working to process that no longer have to be the same piece of work that fixing those corner cases and those coffee screens.
So I have probably a bad reputation in this question because I've been advocating for a PDF police force for some time now. And it's always been, my big concern about this format is it's so broad, so big, so powerful, and yet so many implementations are doing it part way. I don't mind so much that there's I don't expect a print developer to do a lot of stuff with annotations or with tag PDF. What we do have is many cases where implementations do a partial job on a certain feature because they only want to take a certain extent of the way. This is directly injurious to the whole premise, the whole value proposition of PDF. So from my point of view, I'm an advocate for it. That's one of the reasons why I'm so heavily involved with developing the Vera PDF project, which is a collaboration between the PDF Association and the Open Preservation Foundation on behest of the EU, which is funding it, and the archivists, many archival institutions in the EU, asked to have created a PDF validator. Now, there are lots of PDF validators in the world. Excuse me, they wanted a PDFA validator. What I would hope is that this one has some potential on account of the way it's developed. The fact that it's starting fundamentally with test files rather than a piece of software. Software comes after the test files and so on. But the idea is that eventually it will be possible to if the industry can come together and agree upon this test suite is canonical. This software, it does the right thing. And we might find ourselves in a position where where any vendor can point to a third-party resource and say, no, that's correct, and therefore I'm either on the hook and I've got to go beat on my developer, or else it's the other guy's problem, don't talk to me. It hasn't happened yet, but of course, seems to me the way in which we need to get out of the problem of poor PDF.
So the problem of poor PDFs, I would think, is a standard problem, whether we're going for a platform or not. Do you think, but the problem of poor PDFs completely impedes the notion of being a platform?
It's a huge challenge. If you're going for a platform, the fact that you have significant variations in quality and in expectations that the processors would have in encountering PDFs is at the very least, a major barrier to adoption as a platform. Whether it kills it or not is a different subject. The use case for PDF, the need for it, it's something that HTML just can't do in so many different guises. HTML is not deliverable, not transactional, not nearly as effective as being a self-contained object and so on. So PDF has immense potential that way, but if it turns out that developers are disagreeing about it, it makes it much harder for it to be a platform, or for users to believe that it could.
What are you doing, Leonard?
I was telling Rick that.
You can tell everybody.
I'll tell everybody. I was just going to say, if and when Rick wants to offer questions to the audience, I got a microphone.
Yes.
There, do you feel better now, Duff?
Thank you.
TL.
And not only that, but I'll offer now. I've got questions, but there may be, as I say, probably better ones in the audience. if we can stop periodically, and I'll stop right now. If anybody has a question they want to throw up,
Well, don't throw it.
let me
out.
know. Nothing yet. Okay. So over and above, and we'll just keep going back and forth, so Duff, keep the, all right.
We had one in the back,
John.
Rick.
Oh, good.
If I can get the microphone on.
I might not.
Not him.
Oh, yeah.
Not him, no, I'm sorry. Let's see if it works. Yep.
Joe, you got it.
Yep. Okay, good. So Duff, I think you did a great job outlining what needs to happen around the PDF files themselves. But if PDF is going to be a viable platform, what do the viewers also need to support? Because, I mean, you've got some viewers that do partial implementations of JavaScript, partial implementations of the spec, ones that munge up PDF files that they don't understand and spit them back out again, so that they're essentially unusable by anyone else. I mean, to what extent do the viewers have responsibility as well? But that's for the hands of just Duff.
At the end of the day, so that the viewers, in PDF 2.0, one of the major changes is that we've removed fundamentally the concept of conforming viewer. And we've replaced it, in a sense, with the idea that if you're going to implement any particular feature in PDF, it's required, it's a shall requirement, that you implement it fully and completely. Now, how do we police that? How do we make sure, in fact, that that's going to happen? How do we prevent the situation that we have today, where a certain large vendor, not very far away from here, has a fruit as their logo? They feel perfectly willing and able to ship software on mainstream consumer platform that manifestly violently does the wrong thing. Doesn't even ask the user if they're interested in breaking their file today. It just goes ahead and breaks it, right? So what's stopping them from doing that? And the answer is, of course, fundamentally nothing. All we can, I believe all we can do is create the circumstance where it becomes less and less acceptable to do the wrong thing and that badly. One of the ways we can do that is providing kind of cast iron developer education. And to my way of thinking, that you're having a comprehensive test suite to address these issues, and indeed having software that makes it easy for an end user to go and bounce their file off of a given thing, find out what it should be, and then perhaps test the software in a similar fashion, or inquire as to whether or not their vendor does the software support this feature that's clearly available. We have there's certainly no gun we can put to the fruit company's head, and they can do the right thing. We can only really provide the tools that make it more and more embarrassing over time for them to do the wrong thing. But I don't have a better solution to that. Of course, the other option is we influence the regulators, the government agencies and so on, that we get them to say, we're never going to buy your thing unless it meets this and that specification, as aided by the perception that the validation software or test we would give. But that's a long road to hoe. Possible, but I certainly get this thing away.
Rick, we have another one back here with you.
Okay, go for it.
So, as an end user, I receive a PDF, and I expect functionality where we've talked quite a bit about readers, conforming readers, and stuff like that. But as an end user, I don't care about any of that. When I click on it, it should work, and it should work consistently. How are we getting similar back-end objects to behave equivalent to other objects that may have a different set? I'm getting it as an example. I've got Acroforms objects like buttons, which can act as links. I also have a link object type, which acts as a link. But the readers, including Adobe Reader, handle both of them differently. So how do we, meaning you guys, help to make sure that me and the rest of us and everybody else outside this building have an equivalent experience, no matter who built the PDF and what the designer decided to put in there as an actual item?
Well, I can definitely say, as someone who's worked on some of the rendering components through PDFBox, or trying to render forms, there's a real problem when a PDF comes without an embedded description of the form's visual appearance. You're kind of on your own. I mean, we've resorted to creating forms in Acrobat and then taking apart PDFs to try and figure out what Acrobat is doing, because it's just not part of the spec. So I don't know if that's something that's going to be changing in PDF2 or what the story there is. But I would love to see a description of how forms should be created if there's no style with them. And the other thing was we noticed that Acrobat's changed its behavior over time. So you can't just say, oh, this is how Acrobat does it. Different versions make slightly different forms. So I'd love to see a canonical set of forms for documents that lack visual information.
Rick, I've got another one unless you want to.
Keep going.
Just a quick one again, going back to the standards discussion. So were you kind of looking at something like the ACID 2, ACID 3 test, like in terms of when you're talking about compliance? Would something like that work for PDF? I don't know if you guys are familiar with the ACID 2, ACID 3 tests.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so acid test is just like a test we use for browsers. Yeah, unfortunately we don't have anything similar for PDF yet. Yeah, so this is definitely something that would probably help. Like as a kind of as a PDF technology developer, we deal with all sorts of companies, and in recent years, we felt the push from some of our customers to start conforming to things like iOS preview, which does not have, let's say, supports for certain features like CAD, CFF fonts, and so forth. And similar things coming from developers adopting Microsoft PDF technology. So there is a serious confusion going on, and it is undermining the value of PDF as a platform. A potential solution might be that PDF Association takes a kind of a more active role in this process. So development of test suite would be an actual progression. There is, of course, problems with that. There's politics involved, and also it's very costly to build a test suite for PDF, just because of the complexity of the format. A potential solution might be to set up a process where, let's say in case of, PDF rendering, like we have so many companies doing PDF rendering these days. So all of us are having internal test suites, large databases for PDFs that we amassed, and we also do automated regression testing, where we compare output of our rendering with reference images. So why don't we do the same thing as a community? So perhaps PDF Association could set up essentially a regression test suite where we can register our regular rasterizers, renderers, and then have a system that automatically compares outputs and identifies, essentially can rank rasterizers or different solutions based on their accuracy or agreements with the spec. So it could be a more kind of incremental process, and something that we can encode our process as a community into evolving test suites.
Mark, you got another one?
We got one up front.
Oh, I go there and then one.
Okay.
Hi, so I just wanted to say that I didn't really know about the test suite stuff the PDF Association is doing. I think it's a really great idea because test suites are great because they can show the presence of a bug. But a test suite can't show, for example, that something doesn't have any bugs, right? It could just show here's a test, and if it does this incorrectly, then it has this bug. And one of the things I was thinking about listening is that the PDF spec is quite long and it's quite complicated. I was wondering, is there any kind of work being done rather than to try to add features to PDF to try to remove things to make it simpler, or not necessarily only removing things, going along another axis to try to make the specification a little bit more algebraic or declarative and functional, so that you can sort of reason about the spec in a little bit more of a kind of high-level ability and not have to slog through hundreds of pages of PDF spec in order to really understand it, so you can make the best PDF processor. Thank you.
PDF development with PDFA is essentially moving in that direction. So it's prohibiting bunch of things in PDF. It also enforces embedding of fonts and anything that would violate this kind of interfere with reproduction of PDF across different systems. Now there are specifications out there which are kind of simpler than PDF, like notably Microsoft XPS, which is based on just XML and just web technologies like PNGs, images, etc. However, it's significantly simpler in format than PDF. But it came out a bit different, essentially. And I think the main advantage of PDF is that it's well-established technology. I mean, there's lots of baggage, but that is it is unclear whether the simpler spec would solve the problem. There's lots of value in existing data. Basically, there are billions of PDF documents out there, and just convincing everyone to switch to some alternate format is not a big incentive for market change. So it would need to be a significant, different value proposition to make things to switch to something.
I'm going to cheat since I happen to have the microphone in my hand before I turn it over to Gary for his question. I'm going to answer your question because I know Duff's going to talk about this tomorrow during his PDF 2.0 session. But some of the issues you addressed, we've addressed in PDF 2.0. A lot of features from the spec have been deprecated because they haven't been used in years or shouldn't be used. So there's been a huge amount of deprecation. There's also been a big effort, and John, you commented on this as well, to document specific algorithms. So not necessarily declaratively, but in the same way that HTML has gone towards officially defining, here's the algorithm that one uses. The committee's been working very diligently with Adobe, and then where there are places where there should be a standardized method, we've been providing our implementations, others have been reviewing it. We've been finding places where a good standardized algorithm is appropriate. So there's absolutely work being done in this area for 2.0, and I'll leave it to Duff to go into more detail tomorrow in his session.
Meantime, we have a question down front. Yep.
Yeah, this is maybe related to that, but one of the criticisms, comments you hear about PDF is that it tightly weds content and format, presentation, and so forth. But the session I just went to on PDF UA seems like it would go some way toward alleviating that. And I wonder if there's thoughts on standards, perhaps another standard related, that would help do that, that would make it easier to extract content, make it easier to change the presentation for PDF content.
Yeah, I mean, tagging PDFs would be a lot easier to extract content. I mean, it's very rare that I've ever seen a tagged PDF. Usually you open up the PDF, it's just a screen of text. So, I mean, those mechanisms have existed for a long time, and people aren't really using them. So, I think it would be nicer to see more support for people actually using those things, like more awareness of them. Perhaps libraries for generating PDFs having more focus on kind of structured creation of the document rather than just put text to this pixel, put text to that pixel, because the guys creating these documents are just developers. We're just going to use the API. The API is this nice structured nested API where they write jQuery-like code. It's nicely structured. It generates a structured document again versus this very imperative kind of text maneuvering. I think you'd start seeing a lot more videos actually being tagged. So I think you could maybe tackle the problems.
I think one of the major reasons why tagged PDF was introduced into PDF back in 2001. Right? So it's been around for some time. It is, as you rightly say, it's the implementation and uptake of this technology has been relatively slow. One of the major reasons for that was that although the feature was present, there are many of the ambiguities in PDF were hiding in 14.8 in the section that specifically is about tagged PDF. requirements were relatively vague in some cases. In other cases, the requirements might not have been vague, but what you might do with the thing once you encountered it was not so clear. PDF 2.0, there was as much as in any other section of the specification, an enormous effort was made to rewrite all the content pertaining to TAG PDF. Our hope is that while it's not, as somebody else was pointing out, it's not yet structured in a fully declarative sense. Tagged PDF and PDF 2.0 is dramatically clearer, easier to read. Even the relationship between the various standard structure types has been organized in such a way to make it completely clear to everybody that this can nest within that, but not in the other thing, and so on and so forth. Many of the complaints I think that developers have very legitimately had, when they looked at it, they said, well, really, do we have to do this? And what are we actually getting for it on the product side? And those things are mitigated, I would say, in PDF 2.0. Not resolved, but mitigated. In addition, there are now a lot more other supportive information from third parties. The PDF Association, the AIM working group that developed PDF UA. Each of these have developed a variety of documents that are intended to help developers understand what you're trying to achieve in PDF, in fact, PDF, and then do it to a very high level. So I'd like to think that in the future, because in authoring applications, there's an enormous amount of structural information about what, again, Word or Excel and so on, about what they're actually doing. Naturally, it's structured content by large in that location. That information is available to be converted into the PDF, and yet it's been a big headache for people to do that. They could just send it through a print driver and so on. The excuses, if I want to use that somewhat aggressive term, those are really going away in PDF. Hopefully, the kinds of issues you're referring to will be substantially mitigated, and developers will see that it's not only much clearer what to do to create a tag properly structured PDF, but also, very interestingly, how to do something with it once you've got it in your hands.
I will cover more about this in tomorrow's presentation, but I believe that the future of accessible PDF is not in tagging or tagged PDF or PDF UA, but in automated semantic structure recognition. So computers understanding the document, just looking at the PDF image and automatically understanding, basically applying all the tags on the fly. Now, until very recently, I believe that was not that's impossible task. Only humans can do that. And as a company, spent probably 5 years developing these complex rule-based systems. But there were recent developments that are changing this, and machines are becoming more capable of doing human-like tasks. So it is possible that one possibility is that PDF will stay what it is, but the interpretation and the machine understanding of documents will improve so that we don't even need something like tags, PDF tags.
Let's shift a little bit. And this is a question that came in the weeks leading up to the conference. Are PDF and cloud, i.e. formatless documents at odds? How does a PDF, a fixed layout format if ever there was one, become a platform in a world where screens range from your wrist to the wall?
Well, first of all, I think some of those screens in the medium size are probably going to stay fixed content. I'm on an iPad or an iPad Pro now, which looks quite good like an education use, which is something like a textbook or magazine style layout. I think a lot of those things will stay in the fixed format, so it stays relevant as the concept of fixed format content. But the other thing is, I think you could maybe take a PDFA angle saying, look, restrict the feature set, and we could end up with a PDF that actually we know is readable. Here and there. And I think that could be quite useful.
Anybody else?
Questions about reflow?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, and I've heard this in other sessions too, but it's about staying relevant in a world where you've got. I heard somebody from the government talking on Friday that 50 to 60% of the people trying to access government documents are doing so on phones. and a lot of government documents are PDFs.
Yeah, so we're getting lots of feedback from our users about that, and the current state of reflow is relatively sad. It works, but very rarely, and users are getting used to cropping PDF. So essentially, they're identifying a content essentially manually and cropping it. I think the solution again is along the lines of what I was talking before, is if we have a solution for automated document understanding, we might be able to properly reflow the PDF across devices automatically, so that's the holy grail. Again, there are some recent developments that make this possible in coming years.
PDF, as we talked about at the beginning, is somewhat of an established platform already. What could disrupt it? What could come in and take the platform away?
Personally, I think PDF is going here. It's going to stay. So PDF is not going away. I don't think there is a threat from our performance. So EPUB was perceived as a threat to PDF, especially because of this accessibility and reflow features. However, with again developments in document understanding, this advantage of EPUB might go away. So I think the main threat to PDF as a platform is fragmentation of the system, or of the implementations, which are undermining the core value of PDF, which is accurate reproduction. What I'm also perceiving as a kind of a vendor, a technology vendor, is that the task of identifying quality solutions by third-party developers or consumers is very difficult. So it's very costly for someone to go and properly evaluate different solutions. Like if you're looking for a PDF reader, you're going to probably sell it just built-in preview on iOS or something that's readily available, and this may potentially undermine the value of PDF.
Sorry guys, you mind if I jump in here? So
Oh, sure.
my question was actually back.
Great.
A
Go
little
ahead.
bit of a chat. So you've already kind of partially answered my question, so I guess excuse that because I'm going to answer it anyway. If you look at EPUB, and this is the session that we saw earlier this morning, I guess that was kind of positioned as being the next development forward to cover the types of documents or books that would be changed based on the size of what you were looking at. So, is it on my phone? Is it on the handheld? Is it on a big massive thing here? Who knows what that's called, right? So, you've just mentioned here that you don't see that moving forward. So my question is, do you really think that's going to be the case, and what would be the reasons for that you'd provide?
I think what's on that is, I guess, is two approaches. One would be EPUB taking this document, designing it to be style, so it fits the screen. You could do the other thing, which is from a PDF, saying, well, this is the default fixed view, and we reflow. I think only if you do something so that it would constrain what would be the so an arbitrary view of what is.
Yeah, so again, until maybe like a year ago, I would say that that PDF and reflow are not possible. Like that machines will not ever reach the level of understanding documents that we humans can. But there are certain developments, for example, ImageNet competition, where machines exceeded already the level of human capability in identifying photos in images. So they're essentially better at telling what's in the photo than humans. And this is a new development. It's just a few months ago, like the machines exceeded our ability to classify objects. And of course, there is a big way to go. Machines are not good in identifying certain abstract context, and probably it will take at least 5 to 10 years until we reach that point. But it seems like that we are on a way to get towards getting there.
Duff, you were making a gesture. Did you have anything to add?
So there's, I can visualize a number of different ways in which this sort of this end screen problem addressing. And I'm not speaking to the question of whether or not the reader will automatically process the PDF and do something intelligent with it from the point of view of free-flowing and unstructured file. It may well be, and that would be a remarkable kind of solution that cuts across a lot of the subjects that we're talking about and renders a lot of our technology obsolete. So that would be major. But broadly speaking, I can certainly imagine a world where one ships, for example, a PDF, and then one attaches other content to that file that are then used as an alternative representation of the file as, when it's, if the reader software is up for it. So for example, it might be a reflowable EPUB that's an attached file with an associated file relationship of alternative. And if your reader was appropriately equipped, when you're opening that PDF, you'd be told, hey, there's an EPUB version of this document embedded within it. You want to, if you happen to be on the phone, maybe your preference is you'd rather view the EPUB first. And should you need to drop back to the page file, you'd be able to push a button and go back there. That's one way to go. It's perfectly, there's nothing wrong with it. I think that'd be a rich and powerful approach. More conventionally, tagged PDFs strikes me as being a way to approach the problem of redeploying content in screen environments. But there's no question that the government is challenged by this problem of people trying to reach this content on the phone, and it doesn't inspire the government necessarily to not use PDF to deploy. The drivers that cause them to want to use PDF remain the same, and they need to deliver something that's authentic to themselves, that is perceived that way. That they need to deliver a file such that when everybody says, hey, at the bottom of page 823, that last paragraph before the bottom of the page, we don't like what it says in that contract right there. Everybody needs to be able to agree upon that. And if the format's getting in the way of that kind of agreement, then that format really does have a huge problem. So I'm not sure I'm really addressing the question.
We've got a couple minutes left. I'll pause for questions from the audience. One in the back. Leonard.
Just a high-level question. We're going to talk about PDF as a platform, but we haven't actually defined that. So what's your definition of PDF as a platform? What is a platform? Is it a document? Is it all that extra stuff that you can do with it, JavaScript? I mean, what does that mean exactly?
So for me, I was thinking in terms of a platform in a similar sense to that which there's a well-understood stack of web technologies, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that together are broadly understood as being the web platform, right? So those are technologies together, along with servers and browsers and so on, bring you a collection, that bring you a document that coalesces in that moment in your browser. And those technologies are the fundamental components that make that possible. Is PDF, and so in my way of thinking, PDF is also a technology not very similar to those others, but is a similar feature in that it is the vehicle by which one can deliver a body of content. And that content has all kinds of features and facilities to it that are very different from that produced in the web stack, but it is nonetheless a coalition of features that together operate for document purposes as opposed to for web page purposes.
Come on, Leonard, do I have another 10? Do we have 10 more minutes, or are we finishing at 10 to the hour? I can't remember.
I was just going to look at that.
And I'm not sure when the next session starts.
Yeah, I would either 5 or 10 to the hour, give people a chance to get to the next session.
Okay. Should we end it, or do we have, is there anything else?
Anyone have a last question
Okay.
from the audience? Anybody else? No.
All right, go ahead.
All right.
Well, it's not it. But what I'd like to know is, do you see in the future that you think PDF, well, won't be the future at any stage, like in 5 years, in 10 years, you know, is this going to, are we pushing around riding a horse when there is a car in the future? So,
I think it's totally open. I mean, PDF does not stop evolving. You know, it's continuing to evolve. Stuff says that if you want to embed reflowable content in a PDF, you will be able to do that. As I said, maybe to subset PDF somehow. Do that. I guess it probably depends on having some sort of fixed view of the page or multiple fixed views of the page with high fidelity as the starting point. I think as long as that is relevant, it's evolved as new technologies have come along, it's incorporated them, so good stuff from that sound.
There's lots of conversation about the formatless documents. So the idea being that essentially the document itself is not, doesn't have format, it's just like a representation in the web out there. And you don't necessarily need to worry about the format. Many of the solutions these days are actually converting PDF to SVG or raster images, etc. So you're not, as a consumer, you don't need to worry about the format of the document. It's just being rendered. I have doubts that I believe that there will be a need for document serialization, which is PDF, going forward for many years.
And on that note, let's wrap it up, and you can go off to your own decisions. Thank you to the panelists.